Hi, my name is Constance. I'm going to be sharing some cool information about a piece of architecture within the Palace of Versailles called the Hall of Mirrors. The Palace of Versailles is in the city of Versailles in France, and it's a town outside the city of Paris. What drew me to this piece was its undeniable beauty, not to mention the fact that it had a very interesting original purpose. So just some background on the Palace of Versailles. It was created under the vision of King Louis XIV in the 17th century. He tasked his architects with building this in reflection of the concept that he created about himself, that he was the Sun King. France at this point in time was growing in power. Rome was still an artistic centerpiece of Europe, but cultural changes began to expand and pop up in a lot of other places too. The Hall of Mirrors was a product of sorts of not only a man who wanted to declare his own glory, but also was a result of some Baroque artistic themes and the extravagance of the Renaissance. The themes of classism were still at large in places like England and France, so their art generally depicted their leaders as of high standing in their rightful places. King Louis wanted to be able to wake up in the morning and walk down a hallway of mirrors that would reflect the daylight as well as his own splendor. Someone may have had a raging narcissistic complex, but that is not what we're talking about today. The entire hallway is about 220 feet long. It has 17 arches and holds about 21 mirrors lining the wall on one side. The other side of the hallway is lined with windows that overlook the gardens and a man-made lake. The mirrors reflect the light beams of the sun to create the most beautiful natural light. The construction of this hall of mirrors began in 1678 by a man named Jean-Baptiste Colbert and lasted until 1684. If one were to guess the most expensive part of the hallway, one might guess that it was the grandiose marble, or maybe the elaborately detailed painting on the ceiling, or even the many gold accents of decor in the room. But it was actually the mirrors themselves. There's an interesting story behind this. At the time, the Venetians held the monopoly for mirror making. This was tricky for Jean-Baptiste Colbert because he had promised to uphold the value of mercantilism and make sure that all materials came from the country of France. So, what Colbert did was have workers sent from Venice to France to make the mirrors on French soil. Legend says that the Venetians found out about this deal and had spies sent to France to have the workers poisoned and killed. Pretty extreme. Another part of the Hall of Mirrors that has an interesting story is the mural on the ceiling. It depicts different victories of King Louis XIV. This was not always the original plan. This plan was actually the last of three different ones. The first one was an idea that would have been painted by a man named Pierre Mignard. The idea was to depict the Olympian deity Apollo, of course, as to allude to the whole Sun King thing. Apollo was the Olympian deity of music, art, sun, knowledge, and some other things. Seemed like a good idea at first to the king until he heard that this artist was also going to be painting a piece at his brother's estate, so he then rejected this idea. The second idea was to depict the glory of Hercules and his victories as to compare them to his own. The last and final plan was to depict his own story and the victorious treaties that he had made in his reign. Today, the Hall of Mirrors still stands a beautiful centerpiece to the Palace of Versailles and was obviously close to the self-centered heart of the king. It functions mostly today as a popular tourist attraction, but sometimes can still be used as a place where heads of state come to meet and other office meeting occasions happen.